There's a warning on the back of this love. Take a little and you can't get enough. It's a devil's game, but I just can't give it up. I'm a shadow holding hands with the dark.
Welcome to another episode of the DEC Educational Webinar Series. I'm Chaz and I'll be your host today. We have two wonderful guests with us today to share. One of them happens to be one of the older tenants, and I mean by older, one of the longer lasting businesses here at the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center. And then in coincidence, we have the newest business at the DEC with us today. I'd like to go ahead and introduce Mr. Anthony or Tony Trippe today. Tony is Managing Director of Patinformatics, LLC, which is an advisory firm specializing in patent analytics and landscaping to support decision-making for technology-based businesses. Thank you so much for being with us today, Tony. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be able to speak with everybody here at the DEC and the audience that'll be hearing this on other channels.
Well, it's a pleasure to see you here, and thank you very much for being one of our longer standing tenants here at the DEC, and certainly one that has been very, very beneficial to many of our businesses here in providing some excellent guidance and support and mentoring over the years, Tony. So we really appreciate you being here. And I think once the audience here understands what you do, they're going to want to learn more about you and also catch up on some reading that you're providing.
Yeah, you know, it's really been exciting to be part of the DEC for so long. I think I was 3 months after the DEC started, I got an office. It was actually right next to Chaz's originally. And yeah, watching the place change and develop and change sites and all the people that have helped my business along the way, it's been an exciting ride, and I owe a lot to the DEC for my business being the success it is today.
Well, Tony, we appreciate that, and we wanted to talk with you today about a real honor that you have received and your experience and your knowledge, and you've been recently asked to be a regular contributor on Forbes. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the story went that I was looking for a new example, case study, marketing piece to talk a little bit about what I do in my company, what my business is, and how I help organizations. So I was looking at quantum computing, and I was reading an article where they were talking about how that was an emerging technology. And I thought that was really, really interesting, and nobody had yet done any real research on what the patent landscape on quantum computing was. And so I began together, and as it came together, it generated a lot of excitement, a lot of interest. It was written up in Wired, it was written up in the Washington Post. There was a graphic of some of the did in the Wall Street Journal, and in Technology Review magazine from MIT. And the editor, the person who wrote the story that went into MIT Technology Review, a gentleman by the name of Martin Giles, approached me about the Forbes opportunity. He liked what I wrote. He liked the way I presented the patent-related information. He liked my thoughts on innovation, and asked if I would be interested in becoming a contributor to Forbes, writing specifically on innovation, technology development, and patents. And I'd read a number of articles in Forbes over the years, and so when given that opportunity, I was just very, very excited to be able to participate. And it's been great. 2 articles so far that we'll talk a little bit about. But just being given an opportunity to share my perspectives and to share some fun stories with an audience like that is just a real thrill.
Well, that's fantastic, Tony. And before we talk about those two articles, tell us a little bit about your company. I mean, what type of business typically seeks you out, and then what do you do to help them?
Okay, so generally speaking, I work with some bigger customers. The people that are my primary clients right now are Fortune 100 type companies, and they're very, very interested in understanding what's happening with regards to patents that are being published by either their competitors or in new technologies that they think that they need to explore in order to be successful. So, for example, while I was with Procter & Gamble, I did this sort of work, and I used to work with all the different vice presidents of R&D, and they would come to me and say, yes, we've heard about this new technology for making non-woven fibers that we want to use in diapers, or a new biodegradable plastic that we want to put in diapers. So we really want to know who else is out there and how much room do we have to operate, and if our competitors are looking into these same areas, and if they are, what sort of approaches are they taking to solve these very critical business problems from a technology perspective. And so that's the sort of work that I generally do. People will come to me with a question, what's going on with biodegradable polymers for diapers, or tell me a little bit about stator technology for electric motors. Just about any sort of technical type of question. My clients will come to me and ask me to do some research, find all the patents that are related to these areas, and then look into breaking it down a little bit by sub-technologies and by companies and by time, and give them a better idea of what's going on. So that way, when they go to make a decision themselves about whether they want to partner or whether they want to develop technology on their own, they've got an idea of what the lay of the land looks like. So that's why it's referred to sometimes as a landscape study, because you're getting an idea of what the landscape looks like as you begin to make important decisions about spending money.
Well, you've just been a wealth of information and guidance to so many of the businesses here at the DEC, and even many that have just come to visit through providing some seminars for us and that kind of thing, just to kind of help Central Ohio and other folks around to really understand the IP landscape just a little bit more. Well, let's jump into the first article that was posted on Forbes, and it was posted on May 5th. And the topic was machines can't be inventors, but they still contribute to the pace of innovation. Tell us what that was all about.
So writing something like this, it's you're not a journalist, so it's not just simply reporting the facts. And at the same time, it needs to have an aspect to it to a certain degree, or at least a hook. Something that's going to get people interested in reading the story. And of course, lots and lots of conversation going on about machine learning and artificial intelligence, and a lot of TV shows, and a lot of talk about things like the singularity. And so there's this sort of buzz that goes along with the idea of machine learning or artificial intelligence. And the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, they ruled in a case where an organization was trying to suggest that a machine could be an inventor. Now, this is a really dull and boring case, because the statutes very clearly say that an inventor has to be a natural person. So as far as the law is concerned, as far as what's in the patent statute, this is cut and dry. There's no question here. There's no discussion. But the fact that it's about machine learning and artificial intelligence made it an interesting story. Excuse me. And so I decided to take that angle and write about this because I thought it was going to be a topic that people would find fascinating, and it did. It did pretty well.
Well, Tony, I thought it to be fascinating, and certainly the ultimate decision is what I was anticipated as I was reading the article, was that at least in this particular case, a machine cannot be inventor. Can you explain, really going back to the very beginnings of filing for patents, really what that needs to be? It's as far as I understand, it's that wow moment. It's that that realization that something's new, and obviously in this article it says that that needs to be a human being.
Yeah. So there's in the U.S. there's three criteria. Something has to be novel, useful, and non-obvious, which is a little bit of legal speak. But bottom line is somebody can't have done it before. It has to be useful for something. And it can't be obvious based on what a knowledgeable person would expect to do. So that's basically how it goes with determining whether or not something's going to be patentable. And then there's another rule about laws of nature and a couple of other things that aren't patentable as well. And so what some people talk about, and what you see sometimes in the movies, is this so-called spark of genius. And that's a lot of times what people refer to when they talk about, well, is something really patentable? What was that spark of genius? What was that inventive step? What was that novel aspect that has never really been done before? And in the case of the machine, my argument has always been the machine was told to do something. The machine was programmed to do something. And even a human inventor, if a lab technician, for instance, is told by his principal investigator to do something specific, to run a specific experiment, that's not inventive output. That's following instructions. And that technician, even though they did a lot of work, isn't typically considered to be an inventor. And a machine is a similar type of situation. Until a machine independently decides that there's an issue and begins to think about why it would be important to solve that issue, then a machine really can't be an inventor, even by the spirit, much less the statute.
Well, that's interesting information to understand. Another common question, just somewhat related, Tony, is a lot of people come in and they have really questions on registered versus, and trademarks and those kinds of things. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so trademarks are there's four different main intellectual property components: patents, which is what I deal with primarily; copyright, which are written works; trademarks and trade dress, which are logos and various slogans and other things that are associated with the business; and then trade secrets. And trade secrets are actually a fairly interesting topic that people don't talk about very much. But the idea with a trademark is that you can put a TM on anything you want. It's a little bit like a copyright. You don't have to file. You can, of course, send a document to the Library of Congress, for instance. You can ask for it to be registered with the federal government, but it's not required to have copyright protection. Trademark is similar in that in the state of Ohio, for instance, if you put a TM on something, somebody in the state of Ohio really can't use that trademark. But if you want federal protection, and if you want to be able to go to a federal court and keep somebody from using a trademark, then it needs to be registered with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And so there's a fairly distinct difference between the Circle R, which is a registered trademark with the USPTO, and TM, which is simply the statement that you're considering this to be a trademark phrase. And I have to put in a disclaimer here. I am not an attorney, okay? I am not providing legal advice. And so apologies for the disclaimer, but if you have any sort of question of any real gravity or it's going to impact your business whatsoever, make sure that you get in touch with a registered patent attorney, trademark attorney, and they can give you legal advice.
Well, that certainly is good advice, Tony. And one just last question on this particular topic before we talk about your other article is what's to stop somebody from taking somebody else's logo and slapping a TM on it?
Nothing really. That's the biggest potential misconception maybe about intellectual property. Intellectual property, generally speaking, is a right to exclude, not a right to practice. And that sounds like jargon or maybe a little bit of wordsmithing, but it's really true that it's up to the owner to enforce or to engage in an enforcement activity. And so unless you get a cease and desist letter, or unless you actively engage an attorney to enforce your rights, it's not like there's anybody out there looking for this type of thing. It's not like there's a police force, generally speaking. I mean, there are certain circumstances when patented products come across international borders and so on, but I don't want to get into any of that. But the bottom line is that it's up to you to be diligent as a owner of this intellectual property. Keep an eye open for people who are taking advantage and infringing and who are creating products that could be mistaken for yours, and therefore you have the right to engage the authorities to file a lawsuit in order to prevent them from engaging in that activity.
Well, that's great information, Tony, and any of those that are listening today certainly want to make sure that what they have is protected. And there again, somebody like you can provide some outstanding advice from your experience, but as you mentioned, certainly going to a patent attorney is the ultimate and correct thing to do when making sure that you're doing things legally. Let's move on to your second posting, which actually I thought was more interesting in the fact that a lot of people don't maybe take the time to protect the value of what their patent filings are worth. And so on May 12th, your second article that was posted was "Companies Miss Out on Billions in Value. New Patent Marketplace Could Change That." And I thought that was interesting. And certainly there's probably some companies here in Central Ohio. Certainly, Central Ohio is such an entrepreneurial community, but and so many companies do have patents here in the Central Ohio area, and maybe they're not really taking advantage of the full value of what they have. So tell us a little bit about that article.
Okay, so again, now I'm getting a little better at this now. My editor tells me the second headline was much better than the first, and it's not intentionally clickbaity, but I'm happy to hear that it had the desired effect, that it got you interested in the article straight away, because that's part of what I'm learning to do during this whole process. But it's a legitimate concern, and specifically, companies spend a lot of money on research and development. They also spend a lot of money in getting patents to begin with, and then maintaining them for a certain amount of time. In the United States, and this is mostly the case around the world, but in particular the United States, a patent lasts for 20 years, basically. And during that time period, there's 3 times when you pay maintenance fees on those. And a significant percentage of the patents never make it to that third maintenance fee payment. And a lot don't even make it to the second maintenance payment. And there's a lot of reasons why that is, but primarily because they're not going to use it themselves. And there are some companies that spend a lot of time and money on having very, very robust licensing and patent sale programs, and they're recouping that money that they put into that R&D. They're recouping the money that they put into filing those patents and maintaining them up to that point. And so their return on investment is very much higher than that organization that says, well, we thought it was a good idea at the time, and it just didn't work out, and therefore we're going to go ahead and allow these to be abandoned so we don't have to pay the maintenance fee. We're going to consider it a sunk cost. Meanwhile, if there was a marketplace where these assets could be traded more effectively, or sales could be conducted a lot more smoothly, then a lot of that value would probably be retained by the companies that invested in it in the first place. And the idea of the story became that, yes, the USPTO is making this big step by actually creating a marketplace. It's the biggest patent office in the world to have ever created a marketplace. And that's significant. And it legitimizes the idea that a marketplace is something that companies should have access to, and the ability to have a market for being able to sell assets in technology that they no longer need. And so it could have been a very dry story about the new marketplace alone. But that's not as much of an interesting story as why people should care about this marketplace. And the primary reason that I thought of when I first read about it, what got me excited about the idea was that companies are losing billions. Actually, there's some estimates that it's more like trillions overall if you look at everything. And there's a quote to the $1 trillion tipping point in the article where they actually talk about the amount of value that's lost because companies aren't taking advantage of their intellectual property this way. And so tying those two ideas together more concretely and telling that story, I thought made for a more compelling article and gave people a reason why they should be interested in this marketplace from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office.
Well, I enjoyed that article, and thank you so much for your input and explanation. It's always great to hear from the actual writer sometimes when you're reviewing something like that. So, Tony, I really appreciate you joining us today, and once again, congratulations on being asked to be a contributor to Forbes. What an honor that is, and what it is to have you at the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center providing that kind of knowledge and guidance to whoever might need it. Let me ask you one last question, if we could. And really what I'd like to ask you is, what advice would you give to any new business that's starting up? And I'm not just talking about one that has intellectual property issues, but you're a seasoned entrepreneur. Just maybe in 30, 40 seconds, kind of give what you would suggest in today's environment that you would say would be important for a new business.
Okay, so actually I believe my next story is going to be on something I learned at Procter & Gamble. And there was a vice president there that was talking about investment in technology that provided a perceivable consumer benefit. And you hear this discussed with new companies, but I can't say strongly enough how really, really important it is that you have a very, very, very clear understanding of what it is that is the value to the customer. And so as you're coming up with this business idea, everybody loves their own business idea. Everybody loves what they're doing, but to validate that idea and to really understand and be able to share very, very quickly, what is it that differentiates, or what is it that's a signature aspect? What is it about your idea, your business, that people can't get anywhere else and that are willing to pay a premium for? That's the other big thing too. One of my other big clients, they talk about a signature experience. What's your signature experience? If your signature experience is what makes people buy you instead of buying from the 30 other people that are like you. And so always concentrate on that signature experience. So that's what I would. It's a very practical, probably often overstated, but it can't be. I can't stress it enough that signature aspect, that differentiation, is what leads to profitability, as opposed to the race to the lowest price.
That's excellent advice, Tony. And I'll tell you, we're blessed here at the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center to host about 150 businesses, and I see new businesses all the time that come in the door, and they're looking for guidance and mentorship and how to write their business plan and whatnot. And that's one of the key things that most of them haven't taken the time to do, to really validate their idea and making sure that it really is something that the community needs and the community wants and that they can deliver. So thank you once again, Tony, for joining us, and good luck to you with all your future articles that you're writing. You got a pretty good challenge to be submitting about an article a week. So good luck on that, and we look forward to future stories. We really appreciate you joining us today.
Great, thanks so much.
Well, now I'd like to take this wonderful opportunity to introduce another guest. And like I mentioned at the beginning, this next guest is a brand new tenant of the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center. His name is Donte Bailey, and his company is Dynasty Technology. Good day to you, Donte. How have you been?
Been great. How about yourself?
Very, very good. Well, hey, we would just want to take this opportunity to introduce some of our tenant businesses to our audience, and thought that you were one of our newest, and Tony was one of our longest standing. That you'd be a good one to introduce. So tell us, give us the 30-second on your business and what you're doing. I know it's a brand new business, and so just give us a little intro.
Well, as you mentioned, it is a brand new business. We are a technology company that offers IT support here. Basically, we are going after small businesses and trying to give them peace of mind, especially during the whole COVID-19 situation. I grew up in a hardworking family, had a grandfather who taught me to be a hard worker, and he taught me integrity, honesty, and a lot of life lessons. So I took them principles and brought them into my company and decided to go after companies that need help. So such as we offer PO, IT support, any type of support we can offer, we try to go after, and we're reasonable about it, especially during this situation that's going on. So we are located here in Dublin, Ohio. So we're looking to grow and offer a whole lot more services as we advance.
Well, that's great, Donte. And not only are you a brand new business, but you're a recent graduate. So tell us a little bit about that, and how starting a business came into your mind.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I am a recent graduate. I graduated a degree in criminal justice, and it actually helped with my business. It pushed me to want to go into cybersecurity. After reading a lot of cases in school, I've seen all these different issues that many people faced with identity theft, phishing, anything that possibly a thief can come up with, a criminal can come up with, I've read about. So I decided to start a company and help stop this. As a victim of identity theft, I know the feeling about it. It's not a great feeling. You find out you got bills and things in your name that you didn't even know you had. So it's not a great feeling, and that's why I brought this company out, and to help out the small person who has these issues, to avoid this happening again, to avoid the grandmother who just checked her email and didn't realize she just unleashed a virus on her computer. That's what brought my company in, and it's going to continue to push it.
Well, Donte, in this day and age, we need that kind of service, and we appreciate your grandfather, who obviously helped to raise you right and provided you with some of those values that you're going to pass on to your customers. Let me ask you one last question. Obviously, you were doing some exploring. You were working out of your home initially. You did some exploring in the community of various places that you wanted to have your business call home. What made you decide on the deck?
I chose the deck because it has that sense of community. The day I came here and visited, I visited probably 2 or 3 other locations, and I didn't get that sense of community. When I walked in the door, it was welcoming. Just walking around, speaking to some of the businesses that are here, some of the opportunities that I can get, it pushed me. And I chose the deck because I have that support that I need. Anytime I need help, I can just reach out to someone. If I need support, I can reach out. The other business locations that I walked through, they were great, but I could tell they were more about the money. And yeah, in this day and age, we need money, but that sense of community is what really made me pick the deck.
Well, we love having you here, Donte, and obviously we've only gotten to know you over the last week, but we look forward to helping you, introducing you to more and more people like Tony Trippe, who just have wonderful businesses here, wonderful experience and wonderful knowledge on, and most importantly, very willing to share with others. We just have so many great, and and then certainly some wonderful sponsors too that step in to provide some great guidance. But that gives us a good opportunity to again say thank you, Donte, and to Tony for joining us today. I did want to, in closing, just offer the opportunity for anybody who is interested right now in making a change in their office environment, maybe getting into their first office environment or whatever it might be, to come and take a look at the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center. We have a very affordable environment. It's just a flat price depending on what type of room that you're in, whether you're a hotspotter and 24/365 access, or whether you step up to having your very own cubicle or your very own enclosed office. But one of the things that I'm hearing from so many right now, especially with this COVID situation, and all of our spaces are very delineated. So it's not an open environment, but there's a good amount of space between every working environment. And people feel very comfortable in that. They feel a sense of privacy in what they're providing. And so we're anxious to talk to some businesses that want to look for a new space. And we just appreciate the opportunity to be able to do that. So again, I thank our guests today, Tony Trippe and Donte Bailey. And thank you for joining us for another episode of the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center Educational Webinar Series. Thank you so much. This is Chaz Frutel. Have a great day.